My stepson once told me straight to my face that I wasn't his real dad and had no right to tell him what to do. Word for word, he said, "You're nothing to me. You're a nobody." So, when it came time to talk about college tuition, I told him plain and simple, he could ask his real dad for the money. I never thought I'd share this story, but it's been eating at me. I need to let it out. My name's David, I'm 45, and I run a high-end wine bar here in town. I built that place from the ground up, no partners, no investors. Just me, a dream, and a hell of a lot of hard work. It's something I'm proud of, more than I can explain. 5 years ago, that bar led me to someone, or at least, I thought it did. Her name was Rachel. She came on board as a bookkeeper to help me get a better handle on the financial side of things. She was sharp, organized, and carried herself with this quiet confidence that I couldn't stop thinking about. It wasn't just her work ethic that stood out, she had this calm warmth that made even the late-night number crunching feel less like a chore. At first, I kept it strictly professional. She was new, and I didn't want to cross any lines. But over time, I started hanging around her office more than I needed to. Looking back, I was finding little excuses just to be near her. Eventually, I decided to go for it. One night after we finished going through the books, I said, "What do you say we grab dinner sometime?" She paused for a second, then smiled and asked, "Is that my boss talking? Or just a man?" I grinned and said, "Just a man." That one dinner turned into a second, then a third. Before I knew it, we were talking about building a life together. Things felt like they were finally falling into place. Rachel gave me her full attention. Her son, Liam, was polite and respectful. I really started to believe I'd found the family I always dreamed of having. A year into our relationship, we tied the knot. Rachel and Liam moved into my home, and things, at first, were great. I threw myself into the stepdad role. I did my best to be everything Liam needed. I took him to games, helped him with homework, made sure he had the newest shoes, paid for family trips, everything I could think of. I wanted to give him the kind of life I wish someone had given me when I was his age. Now, he still saw his biological father every now and then. And I'll be honest, that always made me uneasy. I knew a bit about Todd's past, stories about him nearly burning their apartment down while drunk. That's what led to him losing custody in the first place. But Rachel kept saying it was important for Liam to keep a relationship with his dad. He's still his father, she'd remind me. Liam needs to know he still cares. She also claimed Todd had cleaned up, gotten sober. But I had my doubts. The one time I saw Todd at a school function, he didn't look sober to me. He was swaying even while standing still, and his eyes couldn't seem to focus on anything for more than a second. Still, I held my tongue. I didn't want to rock the boat. I mean, who was I, really? Just the stepdad, right? Man, if only I had known back then. I wanted so badly to be the best father figure possible that I missed what was really happening. Looking back now, it's all so clear. But hindsight, that thing is always 20/20ths. And the real problems? They hadn't even started yet. Not even close. Time kept moving, and suddenly it was Liam's 18th birthday. His graduation was around the corner, and the kid was on edge, pacing around the house and overthinking everything. He'd keep asking, what if something goes wrong? What if no one shows up? What if it's a disaster? One evening, I saw him spiraling and put my hand on his shoulder. "Hey," I said. "Relax. I've got an idea. Why not throw your birthday party at the bar? We'll reserve the best section just for you." His whole face lit up. My wine bar had turned into a bit of a local hot spot, and he'd always wanted to show it off to his friends. "Really?" he said, already pulling out his phone. "This is gonna blow up my Instagram. Everyone's gonna be jealous." And just like that, I threw myself into party planning mode. I wanted everything to be flawless. I even took him out to buy a designer suit, sleek black, fitted perfectly. He looked like he was about to close some corporate deal. I gave him an approving nod. So, how many people are you inviting? I asked one evening as we were finalizing the details. He hesitated, staring at his phone. About 30, I think. Cool. Can you send me a guest list so I can plan for space and catering? I don't really have it yet, he said quickly. Just plan for 30, okay? In hindsight, I should have pushed harder for that list. But I was caught up in the moment, so excited to make the night special for him. We set the tables, adjusted the lighting to a perfect golden hue, and transformed the bar into a space that felt upscale but still fun, a perfect mix for a teen turning 18. We served fancy mocktails and bite-sized appetizers. Liam looked sharp in that suit, cracking jokes with his friends, posing for pictures. Rachel's relatives were chatting with his classmates, and everything was going smoothly. Until he showed up. I spotted Todd the second he walked through the door, even before he said a word. He staggered slightly with each step, eyes glassy, posture unsteady. He was drunk. No question about it. I'm here to wish my son a happy birthday, he bellowed, grabbing everyone's attention. I happened to be sitting next to Liam when Todd stumbled toward us, eyes locking onto mine with nothing but hate. Get up, he mumbled, waving me off. That's my seat. I'm his real father, not you. That's what Todd said, loud and bitter. I kept my voice level, tried to stay calm. There's plenty of space at the next table with the rest of the guests, I told him, motioning politely. Why don't you sit over there? No, he snapped, this time with a growl in his throat. This is my place. You need to get out of here. Who do you think you are? I glanced at Rachel, silently begging her to step in and defuse the tension. Say something, anything. But she just sat frozen, staring down at her hands like they held the answer to some impossible equation. Her face had gone pale. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. This night was supposed to be about Liam, his birthday, his moment. I wasn't going to let it fall apart because of Todd's drama. Looking Todd square in the eyes, I said, slowly and clearly, let me make this simple. You've got two options. Sit with the other guests, or get escorted out by security. His face twisted with rage. Oh, look at you, Mr. Big Shot, he sneered, leaning against the table, barely holding himself upright. Throwing your money around like it means something. You think you can buy everything, huh? Buy my son. Buy my family's love. People were starting to notice now. A few of my regulars at nearby tables tried to act like they weren't listening, but I could see their ears perked up, their eyes flicking over now and then. My staff stood just outside the action, waiting for my signal. Todd wasn't finished. You stroll in here with your fancy bar, your big house, and think you can just replace me? His voice was rising, shaking with bitterness. Well, guess what, money doesn't buy family. Then, before I, or anyone, could stop him, he grabbed a plate off the table and flung it to the floor. The crash rang out across the room like a fire alarm. Shards of glass and fancy meats flew across the marble floor. And then he did it again. And again. Plates of food, cheeses, olives, crackers, all shattered. An imported bottle of sparkling water tipped over and spilled all across the polished wood bar top. I locked eyes with the head of security and gave the smallest nod. They moved in without hesitation, smooth and controlled, exactly the way we trained them. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, the lead guard said, gripping Todd's arm firmly. They escorted him out as he shouted nonsense, his words slurred and angry, echoing off the walls until the front door finally slammed behind him. And then, silence. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the guests started murmuring again, quietly at first. I stood up, threw on my best smile, and addressed the room. Apologies for the disruption, folks. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Drinks are on the house. My regulars. They took it in stride. It wasn't their first rodeo. Within a few minutes, their conversations resumed like nothing had happened. But at our tables, it wasn't so easy. Liam's friends whispered behind their hands. Rachel's family exchanged uneasy glances. I could feel their eyes bouncing between me, Rachel, and Liam. You just knew it'd be all over social media by sunrise. Liam sat stiff in his chair, poking at his food without taking a bite. The confidence he had earlier in that sharp black suit had evaporated. Now he just looked small and defeated. That party he was so excited about, the one he said would make his classmates jealous, had turned into something he'd probably want to forget. About an hour later, he muttered, "I've got a headache. Can we go home?" That was that. The party ended. People gave polite goodbyes, but I heard the whispers as they left. Poor kid. Did you see what happened? The second we got home, Liam bolted to his room. I helped the girls upstairs, then headed down the hall to check on him, hoping I could say something to make it right. The next morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Liam came down for breakfast looking like he hadn't slept at all. Big dark circles under his eyes. He took his seat at the table and stared into his cereal like it might give him answers. "How you feeling, buddy?" I asked gently. "Fine," he muttered. One word. No eye contact. And that was it. The days that followed felt like living in a haunted house. The bubbly, talkative Liam I'd come to know. Gone. Replaced by someone quiet. Distant. Whenever I walked into a room and caught him talking to Rachel, he'd go silent like someone had flipped a switch. I tried to talk to her about it one night after Liam went to bed. Maybe we should get him someone to talk to. I suggested. Therapy, maybe. But she just waved it off. He's fine. Just needs some time to process. Give him space. But I could tell, it wasn't fine. Not even close. Still, when graduation day came around, we all showed up. Rachel and I sat in the audience, and I clapped until my hands stung when they called his name. He looked sharp in his cap and gown, and for a split second, I thought I saw him glance our way and smile. Maybe things were starting to turn around. We threw him a party back at the house. I made sure all his favorites were on the menu: truffle fries, steak sliders, those little crab cakes he always snuck from the kitchen, and even the ridiculous 3-tiered chocolate cake that took nearly a week to get right. His friends came over, and for a while, the place was filled with laughter and energy. Talk of college, road trips, beach days, it felt like things were normal again. For a few hours, I let myself believe we were out of the woods. Liam was laughing, smiling, joking around. Then his phone rang. He stepped into the hallway to answer. When he came back, something had shifted. His face was different, more serious, more resolved. He walked right up to me for the first time in days. "My dad's coming over," he said. "He wants to congratulate me." My stomach dropped the second he said it. "Absolutely not," I replied, without even blinking. The memory of his birthday disaster was still way too fresh. "Liam," I said carefully, "just think about what happened at your party. He came in drunk, made a huge scene, and wrecked the place." And then Liam cut me off, voice raised and sharp. "That was your fault. None of it would have happened if you had just moved and let him sit down. He's my real dad. You should have just stepped aside," he snapped. That hit me like a punch straight to the chest. After all the silence, after everything that had happened, this is what had been festering in his mind. That I was the one to blame. I looked to Rachel, desperately hoping this time she'd step in, say something, finally be the parent Liam clearly needed right now. "Rachel, come on," I said, trying to stay calm. "Please tell him how out of line his dad was at the party." But just like before, she sat there staring into her lap, like her hands had all the answers in the world. No words. No defense. Just silence. The same passive silence that echoed back to that night at the bar. And something inside me finally broke. 5 years. 5 years of trying to be the ideal stepdad. Of walking on eggshells. Of making excuses for everyone's behavior. Of pushing down my own frustration to keep the peace. It all came spilling out. "Listen to me, Liam," I said, voice steady but firm. "That was my wine bar. I planned that whole party for you. I'm the one who bought you that designer suit you wanted so badly. I put everything into making that night special, and what did your dad do? He showed up wasted, embarrassed you in front of everyone, and trashed the place. He didn't even bring you a gift, Liam. All he brought was chaos, and humiliation." Liam's face twisted from anger to pure rage in a split second. "Oh my God, here we go again," he yelled, throwing his arms up. "This is always about money with you, isn't it? You think just because you paid for something, you own it. You think you can control everything just 'cause you've got cash." He spun toward his friends, who were standing around awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable and probably wishing they could disappear. "My real dad is coming over soon," he said, laughing bitterly. "Be nice to finally have someone normal around here instead of this." He waved a hand in my direction like I was some roach that had crawled out from under the fridge. I tried to keep my voice even, trying not to let the emotion boil over. "Your father is not stepping foot in this house. Not after what he pulled at the bar." That's when Liam completely lost it. His face went red, and he started yelling at the top of his lungs, in front of all his friends. "You're not my dad," he screamed. "You mean nothing to me. Who do you even think you are, trying to tell me what to do? Just some guy my mom married 'cause he's rich?" The entire room went dead quiet. His friends stood there frozen, some staring at the floor, others pretending to check their phones. I saw one kid tilt his head back like he was suddenly fascinated by the ceiling. Liam turned back to them with venom in his voice. "Let's get out of here," he said. "I don't even want to be in his house." He practically spat the word "his" like it was something dirty. The group shuffled out quickly, not a single one looking me in the eye. The front door slammed behind them so hard it made the windows rattle. And there I stood, alone, surrounded by half-eaten food and forgotten party plates, like I'd just been hit by a truck. Surely now, Rachel would say something. This had to be the moment she finally stood up for me. Right? Rachel cleared her throat. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. Detached. Like we were strangers. "You had no right to throw your money and this house in his face," she said, without looking up. "You didn't need to remind him this isn't his home. That was cruel." I stared at her, completely stunned. Like I was seeing her for the first time. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, barely able to contain the disbelief. "Where were you when your ex was throwing dishes across my business? Where were you just now, when your son stood in front of all his classmates and screamed at me like I was dirt?" Rachel shook her head like I was the one being unreasonable. "You're the adult," she snapped. "You should know better than to argue with a teenager." I let out a bitter laugh. "And you should know better than to keep pretending none of this is your problem," I shot back. "But that's your move, isn't it? Just sit quietly while your ex-husband and your son treat me like garbage." "Well, I'm done. I'm done being the doormat in this house." Her face hardened. She didn't say another word. She turned and walked upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the door to the guest room slam shut. The next morning felt like we were all sitting at a funeral. Rachel sat across from me, barely touching her eggs, pushing them around her plate while avoiding eye contact like it was a sport. I was just about to excuse myself from the table when Liam stumbled into the kitchen, still wearing his wrinkled party clothes from the night before. The stench of alcohol hit me before he even sat down. I glanced over at Rachel, expecting, hoping, she'd say something. Anything. Her teenage son was clearly drunk, walking in at 9 in the morning like it was nothing. But, just like always, she stayed silent. Eyes locked on her plate. I finally broke the silence. "Where have you been all night?" I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as I could. Liam turned toward me, his eyes bloodshot and filled with pure disgust. "It's none of your business," he said with a sneer. "You're not my dad. You're not anybody. Just dead weight taking up space in this house." Then he turned and stumbled off to his room like he hadn't just punched me in the chest with his words. Rachel, as usual, stayed quiet. Just sat there at the table like a statue. At that point, I was starting to think silence was some kind of weird power she had mastered. Like the more chaos around her, the more invisible she became. The next week felt like I was living in a haunted house, except the ghosts weren't silent. They were just rude. Liam refused to speak to me directly. Instead, he'd talk about me like I was a lamp or a piece of furniture in the way. "Mom," he'd say to Rachel, pointing straight at me, "can you ask your husband to pass the salt?" Or he'd walk into a room, stop dead in his tracks, and say, "This guy's in my way," then just stand there, waiting for me to move. And I said nothing. I just watched. Let it all play out. 5 years I spent trying to be the perfect stepdad. 5 years walking on eggshells. 5 years pretending not to notice the disrespect, the looks, the cold shoulders. Now. I was done. Let them show me who they really were. And man. I wasn't ready for the performance I was about to witness. It was Sunday night, and Rachel and I were locked in yet another silent dinner, just the clink of forks and distant tension, when Liam came bursting into the room like he'd won the lottery. "Dad!" "I got in," he shouted, waving an envelope around like it was made of gold. "NYU accepted me. I got into my dream school." He ran straight to Rachel, practically tackled her in a hug. They were both beaming, all smiles and excitement. Then, with a smug little smirk I'll never forget, Liam turned to her and said, "Tell your husband he needs to pay my tuition." Something in me just snapped. I smiled, but not out of happiness. It was the kind of cold smile that said, "I've had enough." "I'm not paying for your college," I said flatly. "You've made it crystal clear I'm not your father. That I'm nothing. Remember that? Well, this nobody isn't writing checks for NYU. Go ask your real dad for help." Liam's face turned the color of a stop sign. He started trembling, tears brimming in his eyes. "You vindictive piece of," he couldn't even finish. He was shaking with rage. "You're doing this just to punish me. You're evil." I stood there, feeling oddly calm as the insults flew. It was like watching a tornado tear through a field, from the safety of a solid brick wall. Loud, wild, but powerless to touch me anymore. "Mom!" Liam shouted, whipping around toward Rachel. "Make him pay. He has to pay." Rachel cleared her throat and switched on that soft, patronizing tone I'd grown to absolutely despise. "Come on, honey," she said to me sweetly, like I was being silly. "Quit messing around. You know you need to pay for Liam's education." I pushed my chair back and stood up slowly. My voice was calm, clear. I meant every word. I've already said what I needed to say. I'm not spending tens of thousands of dollars on tuition for a kid who's spent the last few weeks acting like I don't exist. For someone who talks to me like I'm nothing in my own house. Then I walked away, leaving the table behind. I could hear Liam losing it behind me, screaming and stomping up the stairs. Plates were crashing, chairs scraping, and dramatic sobs echoed off the walls. Like father, like son, I thought to myself, bitterly. I sat alone in my room, listening to the noise downstairs slowly fade. I knew it wouldn't be long before Rachel showed up to take her turn in the family meltdown. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, my bedroom door flew open and there she was, red in the face, full of fury. "I'm sick of it," she snapped. "Sick of your games. You need to grow up and pay for Liam's education." I didn't flinch. I just looked at her calmly from where I sat on the edge of the bed. "No," I said. "You and your ex can figure it out. Between the two of you, I'm sure you can make something happen." Her jaw clenched tight. She started pacing like a caged animal. "You're being completely selfish," she hissed. "He's a teenager. For God's sake, you're the adult. You're supposed to be the bigger person." I sat there watching her, and all the memories came flooding back. Every single time she used that same line to keep me quiet. "Be the bigger person, David. Let it go, David. He's just a kid, David." And every time, I smiled, nodded, opened my wallet and swallowed the disrespect. Every single time. I took a deep breath, let it out slowly. "He's not a little kid anymore," I said quietly. "He's old enough to know right from wrong. He's made it very clear how he feels about me. So tell me, why should I invest in the future of someone who sees me as nothing but a bank account?" Rachel stopped pacing. Turned toward me with an icy stare. "Fine," she said, voice flat and cold. "Let me make it real simple. Either you pay for Liam's college, or I'm filing for divorce." She clearly thought that would break me. That I'd fall apart, beg her to stay, grab my checkbook and do whatever it took to keep the peace. That's what the better man would do, right? I just shrugged. "Okay," I said. "Then get divorced." The look on her face. It was almost funny. Her mouth opened like she had something to say, but nothing came out. Then it opened again. Still nothing. You could see it on her face, she hadn't expected me to actually call her bluff. "I'll be calling my lawyer first thing tomorrow," I said, my voice steady. "In the meantime, you and Liam should start figuring out where you're going to live." She didn't argue. Didn't yell. Just stood there, staring at me like she was finally really looking at me, for the first time. Then, without saying a single word, she turned and quietly walked out, closing the door behind her. The next morning, I came downstairs and walked straight into what looked like a carefully staged ambush. Liam was already seated at the table, his eyes red like he'd spent all night rehearsing sadness. Rachel sat next to him, wearing a look of calm, reasonable concern. "Honey," she said with a gentle smile that I now realized was more manipulation than warmth, "we've all had some time to calm down and think about things." Liam nodded quickly, like he was playing his part in a school play. "Yeah, I mean, we all kinda overreacted yesterday," he said, syrupy sweet. "Things just got a little out of hand." I stood in the doorway, watching them. And for the first time in 5 years, I saw them clearly. Not as the family I thought I had, but as two people trying to play me like a fiddle. Rachel kept going, laying it on thick with that soft voice she used whenever she was trying to get something. "We're a family, David. Families argue, sure. But they also forgive. And since you were the one who blew things up over the college thing, maybe it would mean a lot if you took the first step to make amends." Right on cue, Liam chimed in. "Yeah, like, if you helped with tuition, it'd really show you're sorry. That you want to fix this." I almost laughed right there in the doorway. They seriously thought I'd fall for this? "Actually," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket, "I already talked to my lawyer, about 5 minutes ago. Divorce papers will be ready by this afternoon." Their faces changed instantly. Liam's fake smile vanished like a light switch had flipped off. Rachel's cheeks flushed red in an instant, that shade of red I'd come to know too well. I looked directly at Liam. "Congratulations," I said, flat and calm. "Now you don't have to worry about your not dad getting in your way anymore. Isn't that what you wanted?" That's when he cracked. The tears came. And this time, they weren't the fake kind, these were real. But I felt nothing. I was beyond being pulled back in by teenage waterworks. Rachel shoved her chair back so hard it nearly flipped. She stormed upstairs without saying a word. Within minutes, I could hear drawers being yanked open and closet doors slamming shut. They packed in silence. No more guilt trips. No more lectures. No more weak apologies with strings attached. Just the sound of zippers, suitcase wheels, and footsteps fading out of my life. And for a moment, I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. That same night, the messages started rolling in. First from Rachel, "We all said things we regret. Can we please talk like adults?" Then from Liam, "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but you're being totally unfair about college." When I didn't reply, the tone changed. "You're tearing this family apart. You're being spiteful. Hope you enjoy all that money when you're old and alone." I didn't respond. Not once. The divorce went fast, thanks to the prenup I'd made sure was in place from day one. Rachel tried to fight it, of course, but my lawyer handled everything like a pro. She walked away with nothing. Not a cent from the wine bar. Not a dollar from my savings. No spousal support. Nothing. I still hear the occasional update through mutual friends. They're in a small apartment on the other side of town now. Liam couldn't afford NYU, so he's working retail at a mall somewhere. Rachel's been trying to get her accounting career back on track, but it sounds like it's not going too well. I've since redone the whole house, cleared out every piece of furniture that reminded me of them. Repainted the walls, replaced the dishes, donated the throw pillows. And honestly, the place feels bigger now. Brighter. Lighter. Or maybe that's just me, finally free of the weight of trying to earn love from people who were only ever there to sell it.